Hi everybody. Today's episode of Take a Sip is going to be titled Our Purpose. This is a requested topic from one of my followers. Excuse me. And this is actually part one of the topic that I'll be covering, but today's topic is Our Purpose. I'm going to start by reading Mark chapter 12, verses 28 to 34. It says, "One of the teachers of the law came and heard them debating. Noticing that Jesus had given them a good answer, he asked him, 'Of all the commandments, which is the most important?' 'The most important one,' answered Jesus, 'is this. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your mind and with all your strength. The second is this. Love your neighbor as yourself. There is no commandment greater than these.' 'Well said, teacher,' the man replied. 'You are right in saying that God is one, and there is no other but Him. To love Him with all your heart, with all your understanding, and with all your strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself is more important than all burnt offerings and sacrifices.' When Jesus saw that he had answered wisely, he said to him, 'You are not far from the kingdom of heaven.'" If anyone is interested in poetry, I did write a poem about this. It's called "What is Your Purpose?" and it's probably the second or third video. It's probably the second video that I ever uploaded. It is in the playlist of chapter 1 of the book, There Still Can Be Virtue. If you're not interested in poetry, that's understandable, but if you are, that poem actually covers a portion of what I'm going to be referring to in this subject. The definition of purpose is the reason for which something is done or created, or for which something exists. My little YouTube brother is named On to Purpose. And I have learned from him that sometimes it's a good idea to also not only look at the definition, but to look at the synonym of a word. So this is me copying him and taking his advice and telling you what the synonyms of purpose are. They are motive, motivation, grounds, cause, occasion, reason, point, basis, and justification. I believe that our purpose is to have a made-up mind on a daily basis to, 1, be thankful, to be pleasing to God, which is number 2, number 3, to rely on His strength, and number 4, to simply love God and love people. My favorite scripture in the Bible is Proverbs chapter 3, verses 5 to 6. And I'll read it, because if I try to say it, I might forget it. It says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your paths straight." This Bible verse, or two verses, they're actually my favorite, but they're also my biggest struggle in my life. I have found it to be one of the hardest things to trust God over trusting myself. I always have a tendency to want to do things in my own strength instead of relying on His strength. And I also find it to be a challenge to walk in my own path. And there are many times in my life where I have created my own path and made a mess of a situation trying to create my own path instead of just allowing him to lead me in his path. There is a previous video where I spoke about a yoke, and I talked about how if you can picture the yoke of two people, or two animals moving something, and Jesus was on one side and I was on the other side. One of the reasons that was the verse, even though it's my favorite verse, is still a struggle to me sometimes, is because the trust part. I had mentioned in that previous video that, and it was using my tools, one of those, there was 3 of them, but there was one of them I was talking about using my tools, and I mentioned the yoke, and I said part of us doing our part is to trust him. So I do recognize that, excuse me, I do recognize that even though it's my favorite scripture, it's still something that I struggle with. But regardless of the struggle, I still feel like our main purpose and our main reason for being here is to love God and to love other people. And the encouraging scripture that I want to read is from Ephesians chapter 5, verses 1 and 2. It says, "Be imitators of God, therefore, as dearly loved children, and live a life of love, just as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God." Stay tuned for part 2.